Corn photographers, what is the most awkward moment you had? What do you feel when you film? How is your job generally? Story 1. I did photography for just over a year. I did the stills for before during the video shoot. As most other credible answers have shown, it's basically a job. I was lucky that I worked contracted for a reputable company that was serious about drugs, STDs, etc. I don't recall too many awkward moments. For the most part, everyone is professional and just focused on getting the job done. I guess it's most awkward when the performers don't like each other, which happens from time to time. Some directors will axe a shoot if there's really bad chemistry. Others will just expect the talent to work through it. Again, my company was good about consent. The talent could always call for cut if something wasn't going right. As far as what I feel, mostly nothing. I'm concerned with getting my quota of quality shots, lighting, angles, etc. I'm a straight male, and to be honest, I am not attracted to most of the female talent. Fake boobies and too much Botox on a 22-year-old is not attractive. Plus, a lot of times they have to have over makeup to look good on camera. And honestly, I don't understand the obsession with backdoor action. It seemed like 3 out of 4 of the shoots had to include it. And it does not smell good. In fact, most of Corn is completely fake. Shocking, I know. The job was good. It certainly paid well and was reasonably predictable. But I'm glad I don't do it anymore. I'll say again that I contracted for a reasonable company. I would wager that a lot of Corn is not done with the same precautions and respect for the talent as mine was. There are all sorts of stories about girls signing contracts that require them to do 2, 3, or more scenes a day, and lots of bad apples that sell drugs to the talent so they can justify not paying anything. So even though as a photographer, you're not being exploited as much, ethically you shouldn't be helping companies that treat their talent badly. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. This might sound a little strange, but here goes. A friend of mine got hired to do camera work at parties for wealthy clients, and I ended up working on his crew. The pay was solid, and he was always into those borderline, barely legal hustles. The setup was legit, pro-level camera equipment, lighting, and we even had 2 or 3 professional estheticians doing high-quality makeup. The idea was to make the women look like corn stars with glam makeup and sexy outfits to match. One weirdly annoying part of the job was constantly having to explain to guests why it needed to be a few degrees colder because of the lighting, number of people, and how much physical activity was going on. The estate we worked at was enormous, just massive. A few guests were jerks, sure, but most people seemed to really like each other. Everyone had their own cliques, but the vibe was laid back and familiar. One thing I noticed, the women were way more territorial or jealous if someone flirted with their partner, way more than the guys ever seemed to be. Really good-looking men with normal dongs always got action, as did the hung dudes. There was drugs, booze, and finger foods everywhere. This was basically a club treat for all the swingers in this area, and most didn't think about certain logistics. To do all the scenes with our crew, we had to make a film schedule. There are just some things you don't really think about or can't explain until you see them firsthand. Like this one. Don't snack all day. If you're about to spend an hour getting it from every angle and doing back door to front door, trust me, that combo ends in what can only be described as a fudgesicle situation. Honestly, nearly everyone on our team ended up having a little fun at some point. What stood out to me though was how weirdly high school the whole scene felt sometimes. Cliques, drama, people sneaking off. Just a bizarre mix of the explicit and the immature, all wrapped up in a very odd setting. There was this 67-year-old entrepreneur who ended up comforting his wife because she felt unloved. No one at the party wanted to do it with her, and it really got to her. Then there was this other guy, a well-known bang buddy with a big dong and a bigger ego, who tried to start a fight with the husband for no real reason. The husband, completely unbothered and surrounded by wealth and private security, just watched as the guy got escorted out. The parties had their share of bare dudes and plenty of chest rugs. It was a strange mix, tons of very wealthy people, but surprisingly, they were all super respectful to our crew. We were paid well, too. Outside of the filming schedule, which was pretty strict, we were mostly just documenting what were, at their core, high-end intimate parties. There were a few weird moments and occasional drama, but overall it was way more low-key and routine than you'd expect, given the money and the nudity involved. Story 3. When I was a freelance camera operator, I found a job listing online for a camera operator for a short film, 2 to 4 days of shooting, maybe 5 to 7 hours a day. They liked my resume and called to offer the job. When they asked my rate, I told them it was $450, including the camera gear. She balked a little and said they only had the budget for $250. Would that be okay? I didn't have anything scheduled for those days, so I could make $250 per day or nothing, and so of course I said yes. Then she says, okay, $250 an hour, times 6 hours a day is $1,500. That's when I realized that we weren't talking about the same thing, and I wasn't interested in shooting corn at the time, so I politely declined. But it was a very attractive offer, and I did very much consider doing it. 15 years later, I really regret not doing it. I could have made so much more money, and now I know that no one gives a crap, though I thought they did, if you were a camera operator for corn. Story 4. Not a corn photographer, but a boudoir photographer. I am also female. One time, I had a guy come in for a shoot who kept trying to flirt with me, which made things pretty awkward. I'm always super friendly with clients to help them relax. Lots of them are being photographed by a stranger for the first time, so I make it clear I'm professional and not there to take advantage of anyone. But this guy totally misunderstood and thought my friendliness was an invitation. In the middle of shooting him, he asked me out for a drink after the session. I had to politely say no. Another time, a different guy came in for a latex shoot and wanted to wear all sorts of anime and female face masks. The masks themselves were pretty creepy, designed to look like real faces, so it was a bit unsettling. But the worst part, the guy smelled absolutely awful, like he hadn't showered in weeks. The studio I worked at back then had no windows, so the smell just hung in the air and wouldn't dissipate. Normally, I have a strong stomach, but his body odor was so bad I was struggling not to get sick the whole time. It made it really hard to focus or keep the conversation going. Honestly, it was brutal. I probably have a few more stories to share, but honestly, the job isn't awkward most of the time. I'm so used to it now that it doesn't faze me. I just switch into full photographer mode when I'm working. My main focus is on getting the lighting, posing, and composition just right, and making sure my client feels comfortable and happy. So, I'm really not paying much attention to the fact that they're bare. Most shoots are pretty casual, we're joking around or quickly moving through different poses, so it doesn't even feel like a sexy shoot. Sometimes, clients like to get into a flow and really get into character, which can make things feel a bit more intense. In those moments, I'm mostly focused on capturing the shots I need without interrupting their groove. Story 5. I was a corn photographer for 17 years, from shooting magazines to internet stuff, based in Central Europe. Once I shot a girl-boy set, and only when the girl was signing the model release did we see that she was 18-2. Gulp. My assistant forgot to ask for her official documentation before the shoot. Chatting with a model after work, she says that this is the only way she can get money for herself as her boyfriend is very controlling and jealous. Turns out he's a big mafia guy who just got out of prison. Never booked her again. The worst were girls who were light on personal hygiene. Some of those smells could fall a bison at 20 meters. A model thought it would be a great idea to break it to her mom that this was her new work. But it turned out both the mom and dad were in town, and both showed up. That was super awkward, as they were totally ashamed and gutted by her choices. Models would steal makeup, clothes, and anything that wasn't nailed down. It was just a job. I ran my own websites, so it allowed me the freedom to live all over the world and party like a pill for all those years. The negatives are that I started to despise myself for depicting women in a certain way. Oh, and the work more or less kills any drive. Story 6. I've had my fair share of awkward and downright creepy experiences with photographers, but when I'm the one behind the camera, one encounter always sticks out. Let me get this straight. I don't judge people for their likings and fantasies. Do you? I say. But I do judge how creepy you're being to me. As for how I usually feel while shooting, mostly normal. This one time, I was at a bar on Halloween night when a guy my sister dated back in high school came up to me. We just chatted casually, nothing weird. He asked about my photography and rates, which was totally normal. Later, I ran into some old friends and said goodbye, but all night I kept feeling like someone was watching me. I had to quietly ask my friends to keep an eye out without making it obvious. Turns out that same guy was staring at me the entire time, even though the place was packed and there were plenty of other people he could have talked to. After finally breaking the seal, I step out of the women's bathroom, and there he is, standing right outside. I try to stay friendly and polite, hiding how uneasy I'm starting to feel. He asks if I'd shoot him and his wife for a sexy shoot as a gift for her. He was newly married. I said sure and told him to message me through my photography page to set it up. We're in a packed bar on Halloween. Not exactly the best place to talk packages, and honestly, I was already getting weird vibes and wanted out. Trying to escape, I head toward a little section behind the bar, a dead end, dim and secluded, where I could catch a breather away from the crowd. But somehow, he spots me and corners me in that tight space. He starts asking if I do solo shoots, beating around the bush about wild stuff. As he talks about certain equipment he's seen in other shoots, he leans in closer, one hand against the wall above my head, pinning me completely against it. He casually mentions he's seen the shoots I've done. Normally, I'd take that as a compliment, but this time, it just gave me a pit in my stomach. I laughed it off, trying to keep things light while feeling seriously uncomfortable. This guy was giving me bad vibes from the start, but I didn't want to be rude, or maybe I was just overreacting. Plus, he's someone my sister knows, so I was definitely more reserved than I usually am. I kept trying to end the conversation, saying things like, "So-and-so's waiting for me," but he still didn't move his arm off the wall. Trying to shift gears, I asked if his wife was with him at the bar and suggested maybe she could do a boudoir shoot as a surprise gift. Anything to steer the convo away from where it was headed. That's when he said he didn't want his wife to know about our ordeal. I replied, "Oh, because it's a surprise. But she'd be okay with this, right? As a nude model. I know it can get complicated. Who knows what's okay and what's not in other people's relationships? Not my problem, though." A smile slowly spread across his face, and he finally admitted it was actually for a site. Then came the bombshell. His wife couldn't know because he was using the shoot to find other people to hook up with. Yeah, no thanks. I was out. He ended by asking if I was into this lifestyle. And just then, a guy friend spotted me, saw how uncomfortable I was, and came over with a beer, giving me the perfect excuse to peace the hell out. After that, the dude started randomly sending me inappropriate snap videos of himself in his pool. I blocked him immediately. Story 7. I have a cousin who set up a small casting couch-style business. He was really pretty straightforward with it. He put a lot of his own money into it to start. He rented a nice little office, had a pretty secretary, one of his cousins, and a whole schedule book. The first few weeks, they were seeing 15 to 20 girls per day at 15 to 30 minutes apiece. The first interview was informational and letting them know what they would be required to do if they choose. The second interview was a bit longer. A good shower, inspection, tasteful photos, and marking down what they were okay with and what they weren't. There they'd learn what the earning potential is and get offered their first scene. It took only a couple of weeks for the awkwardness to start, and it was primarily in the form of boyfriends, girlfriends, and parents. Yes, parents would storm in and demand all kinds of answers. They'd call the police and landlord and anyone they could to try and shut them down. But in the end, they remained operating for several years. After my cousin and staff had enough money to go on and do something else, they shut down, moved, and did just that. Story 8. Here's another friend of a friend story. I ended up chatting at a party with this guy. Let's call him Bob, about his job. Turns out he spent years filming both soft and hard corn. Probably the most recognizable thing he worked on was HBO's Cathouse series. A lot of what he described has already been mentioned before. The smells, the way everyone treats it like just another day at the office. One of my favorite stories he told was about a scene warm-up. The actress was sitting there completely bare, casually sipping from a "I Hate Mondays" mug while reading the script. For some reason, that image always stuck with me. It just cracked me up. One thing he told me that I hadn't known was how business-savvy the big-name stars in the industry can be, especially the women. They know their bodies are their assets and treat them accordingly. Some even insure specific body parts against work-related injuries or the risk of STDs. He said their contracts often come with detailed riders, kind of like old-school rock bands. These can include lists of male or female performers they won't work with, specific acts they're willing or unwilling to do, the order of positions, and strict hygiene or screening protocols their partners must follow before a scene. It's all very calculated and professional, way more structured than most people think. There was one story Bob told me about a massively famous star, someone whose name you'd recognize instantly, but I won't say it here since it's all secondhand and I don't want to spread anything that might not be true. According to him, she was in the middle of a high-budget shoot, doing a scene with 3 guys. Partway through, mid-DP, one of the performers, who wasn't on her approved list, put his hands on the back of her head. That was a hard boundary for her. She stopped the scene immediately, got up, and left. She made it clear she wouldn't return unless that actor was fired, and she was given additional compensation. They fired the guy on the spot and met her demands. Bob said the industry has very strict rules when it comes to consent and boundaries. If you break them, you're out. No exceptions. Story 9. I used to shoot extreme corn in college, and for a few years after I graduated college. It was between 2010 and 2016. I have a degree in photography and was in Boy Scout, and I'm very good at knots, so a friend got me into it by helping tie up men and women and photographing them. This led to me doing tons of more work. The worst is feeder work. These poor women would just eat and eat on camera and then puke all over themselves. It was pretty rough stuff. Also, it would make me kind of sad because these women would gain large amounts of weight quickly between each time you'd work with them, and it just didn't seem healthy. As has been said already, the worst part is the smell. Group project scenes, and the feeder ones. The smells were enough to make you gag sometimes. Also, if you want to make decent money, you have to do both gay and straight scenes, which as a straight male at first is really odd, but you get used to it shockingly quick. The worst part is you become kinda numb to it all when you are behind the camera. Like you will meet your model and she will be very attractive, but as soon as you are behind the camera, it becomes very much so a job and you become focused on getting a good shot and the lighting correct. The awkwardness of them being bare and soloing or doing it in front of you disappears so quickly. You sort of become numb to it all to the point in your personal life, intimacy doesn't affect you the same. One of the most awkward things was when models would show up with their boyfriends, who would just be like really weird and awkward in the set background. Like it would almost always be buff military or former military dudes or wannabe MMA fighter types. And they'd stand cross-armed off to the side and being very encouraging to their girlfriends or boyfriends while watching them do it. I personally just always found that odd. I understand they came, I guess, to make them feel safe, but some of the weird things they'd say would always make you scratch your head. I only got smoothie sprayed once, and it just grazed my leg. Never really got involved with the scenes other than that. Honestly, sets were much more professional than I imagined when I was younger. Most of the corn girls were not like crazy oars who wanted to do it constantly. It was literally them turning it on and off for the camera. I worked with a smaller budget company, so I never saw fluffers, and I honestly question if they really exist. It would be common to see the guys sort of just casually be soloing between shots to keep it up and strong. Which is sort of weird. You'd be talking to them about asserting a shot up and they'd just be soloing it the whole time. The pay was pretty good. Usually on set days it was about $60 an hour, paid out in 4-hour blocks. So even if you worked 6 hours, you'd get paid for 8, which was cool. You're an independent contractor / freelance, even if you tend to just work for one company. I'm mostly out of that world now, with the occasional shooting for some girls who I've stayed in contact with to shoot for their of pages. Story 10. Former corn producer here. I've mentioned stories here on Reddit that were more sad than awkward, and though I didn't run the camera all the time, there was awkwardness abound. During setups, it's common knowledge that the guy needs to either start getting ready or remain ready. In straight corn, the woman will interact with the guy to keep those energy flowing. In gay corn, back in 2003, the guys were straight, so they would watch straight corn, or sometimes just stand there and solo off. On more than one occasion, the guy would be soloing and causally look at me and say sup while I was working. You can make the argument that he was probably gay, but I was the least attractive man on that set. On a straight corn set, the guy and the woman were doing it in between setups. The woman wanted a blanket from her car but needed to tell me where the keys to her car were. So, while getting banged, she was like, "It's in my gym bag, side pocket." I once opened a dishwasher in a studio to get a plate and found the whole top rack filled with toy dongs. They were used by performers doing live sessions. Some guy came up and was like, "There's my favorite," and took a blue one from the rack. Devin Davis, the now deceased wife of Jonathan Davis of Korn, was best friend with Jill Kelly back when I worked for her. They did a photo shoot where they were tasting their pies, like 5 feet from my desk. Devin kept her wine glass on my desk and kept walking up to me like, "You're getting excited, huh?" I really wasn't, and just wanted to work without causing any waves since Jill was my boss. She later got mad because she demanded I picked up dog crap from Jill's dog, and I told her no. I guess some of those aren't really awkward, but the most awkward thing on every set is the whole crew sitting in silence watching a guy go to work. He announces when he's about to be done and the crew and woman-man swing into action to get the pop shot. Story 11. My uncle's best mate used to have his own photography business. He stopped about 8 years ago. He always mentioned a story where a woman approached him and asked him to take photos of her so she could give the album to her husband for his birthday. Fully bare pictures of her. Anyway, she'd apparently been using a fake dong on her back door, and she was around 2 hours into the shoot when a little nugget of backdoor brownie came sliding out, which just so happened to be caught on camera with her showing a face of absolute horror. She got changed and left and paid for the pictures several weeks later, except the one of the Great Escape. I never did see those pictures, so I can say for certain. Story 12. I had a good friend who went to film school and ended up in LA trying to make it. He wasn't getting a lot of work, but through some connections he had met at a party he was offered a gig as a camera person on a corn shoot. He did it for a few years as discreetly as possible. It's a sup. Apparently, it's an open secret that many camera persons and even directors early on in their careers will do some moonlighting shooting corn. James Cameron began his career shooting corn. Edit: I did a little research on this and can't find a damn thing to back this up. Could be just an unfounded rumor. We had a really long discussion about it once, and these are the big things I remember. 1. The job can be really boring from a creative perspective. Most production companies were very rigid with the shots they wanted, and it didn't leave much room for artistic license. Keep in mind, this was like 15 years ago. Things may have changed. 2. The worst part by far was the smell. Anyone that's ever shot a film indoors knows one of your greatest enemies is the massive heat generated by the lights and equipment. Imagine 2 people going for hours in a room that's getting steadily hotter. Add in the backdoor action and all bets are off. 3. Drugs everywhere. The more professional production companies usually ran a tight ship with regards to drugs, but most of the amateur ones, lol, it was anything goes. 4. A surprising number of cream pie shots are faked. They use a special liquid for that. 5. Everyone is surprisingly normal. They're just people doing a job for the most part. The industry has some a-holes and creeps, but in the mid to high tiers of the industry, people treat it like any other professional job. Story 13. I'm a photographer who has on a few occasions taken photos of corn, usually for friends who have but my story is from before I did so. A model reached out for me for a shoot. We chatted normally and talked out some minor details. Nothing explicit, just a bit of topless stuff. Mind you, I didn't know her at all. She was a random person who reached out on Instagram. She texts me and tells me that we are going to FaceTime at 12 a.m. I insist that we can talk tomorrow and that I'm already in bed, and she persists it's fine. I hate FaceTiming, especially with people I don't know, especially at midnight when I'm already cozy in bed. She calls me anyway and is in the middle of doing her business in bathroom, completely bare and drunk. I was taken aback and told her we can just talk tomorrow. She gets upset and says that we need to talk now, so she can show me her body and her tattoos. She says this as she's wiping up. I was super skeeved out and hung up. Needless to say, I did not feel comfortable doing a photo shoot with her and I ghosted. Story 14. I once had to shoot the ugliest couple I have ever seen. Woman looked like a 6-foot ogre and man looked like a tiny Harry Potter with a soul patch. They had zero chemistry. and she kept looking at his dong and trying to make this sultry face, but it looked like she was confused and disgusted by it. They also insisted on shooting in the hot tub, but she was the exact same color as the stucco behind it. Story 15. Not photographer here, but cinematographer. When I was at the beginning of my career, I accepted a proposal to work on a hard movie. After the second day of filming, the director approached me and told me, "It's clear you are a good cinematographer. I love how you manage the skin tones and mood. Just one thing, in this industry, it's not only the face that we want to light correctly." Story 16. I don't shoot corn, but I am a photographer who shoots a lot of art nudes, and my models range from first-time models who only shoot fully clothed to people who shoot corn. Before every shot, I give the model a safety talk, in which I say that I won't touch them, that I'll show them every shot I take, and tell them that if anything is making them uncomfortable, I want them to speak up. I once had a model interrupt that talk to say, "My job is mainly shooting extreme corn. There is nothing that you are going to say or do that will make me uncomfortable." That felt awkward to me. I thought about it for a second and told her that I did not care what she did at other times. I was going to treat her like I treated every other model, and then I went on with my model safety talk. I have to admit that I am always a bit nervous about working with a model who is new to me. Her saying that actually made me relax a bit during the shoot. Story 17. I do boudoir photography as a side hustle, and you be amazed how quickly tasteful can turn into tacky or downright raunchy and awkward. There's a ton of that just by virtue of the work, but here are my top 3 examples. 1. A bride decided to do a photo shoot for her groom. She comes in with an assortment of outfits, progressively provocative, and one of them is the classic white bridal lingerie getup, which we decide to save for last. The shoot is going well. The bride isn't nervous and is actually pretty fun and chill. She poses in some cool looks, like a baseball jersey to rep their team and a dorky elf outfit straight out of Lord of the Rings. We get to the end of the shoot, and it's time for the super sexy wedding night look. The bride touches up her makeup and she is looking hot. I send her off to get changed because the outfit consists of stockings, garters, a corset, the whole shebang, and I want her to have enough time for a good assortment of posing options. As I'm making a few adjustments to the lighting, I hear a scream from the back. I rush to the dressing area and call the bride's name. I find her half-dressed and sobbing, clutching one of her chesticles. I look a little closer and there's blood on her hand and her chest. I asked her what happened, but she's too upset to speak. I ask if she can show me, so she moves her hand, and then I frigging scream. It turns out she didn't know what the garter clip was for, and mistook it for some type of clamp thing. The thing cut her so badly, she ended up needing stitches. A few weeks later, we were able to rush an appointment for her to finish the shoot in time for her wedding, but she decided to leave the stockings and their accoutrements behind for the final go. 2. Another good one was when a young woman treated herself to a photo shoot for her 21st birthday. She said it was all about giving herself a confidence boost, but I had a hard time believing it because she was definitely the conventionally gorgeous type. I asked her about it, and she was very candid. She explained that while she was physically attractive and in great shape, for some reason, whenever a relationship started to get serious or intimate, the person would just ghost her. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out why that would be. So I told her as much. She got changed and we started. Things were going smoothly and she was having a good time. She was an absolute knockout and a natural with posing. We were really enjoying ourselves, talking throughout the process and getting to know one another. The time came for some more close-up shots, so I talked through what that could look like, let her decide how she wanted to stage them and whether she wanted to be fully bare or partially. She decided on fully, and went to the dressing area to get herself situated. She comes back and I start with some full body shots and move a bit closer every few shots. I get to be about a foot away from her, and I am hit with the most intense smell. I know that it can possibly be coming from anywhere but her body. I get a little closer to confirm my suspicions, and yup, it's definitely coming from her. I figure there has gotta be something going on with this girl's health or hygiene and decide to bite the bullet and talk to her about it. I don't beat around the bush. I just say, "Hey lady, I have to be honest with you. There's a bit of a smell down here." She doesn't even look surprised, And she looks at me like I have 3 heads and tells me of course there is, I keep my flower wild. We get to talking about it in depth, and I learn that not only does she not groom her downtown area, she also doesn't wash it. Her mother warned her against using feminine cleaning products, and she took that to mean all cleaning products. Fam, I gave her a clothed demonstration of how I do it myself, handed her a bar of soap, and let her use the shower in my attached apartment to remedy that situation immediately. She came back with a smile on her face and a song in her heart, and we finished the shoot without incident. That could have gone a whole different way, but to this day she tells me I changed her life. 3. I saved this one for last, because it was the most awkward for me. I don't often shoot couples, for various reasons. However, a really good friend of mine asked very nicely, and I always had a little crush on her, so I said yes. I was confused though, because I'd never met her partner, and was kind of surprised to hear she was dating someone, and it was serious enough for an intimate photo shoot. She admitted it was new, but she was just so into him that she had to go for it. We set the date and talked logistics, and all seemed fine. The day of the shoot comes around, and I'm nervous. I hate couples shoots, y'all. They arrive, and we do introductions. Something about the boyfriend seems familiar but also kind of off, but I just roll with things. They change clothes and we start off with some cheesy look into her eyes. Crap to ease into the stuff. We get into a rhythm and things are actually not terrible, so we take a break to get ready for the next set of shots. This is where it gets awkward. The boyfriend comes out first, and he just kind of stares at me. He starts talking and tries to pull the whole, "you're too pretty to be behind the camera" thing. And I'm like, dude, chill. Then he looks at me with a weirdly intense expression and asks, "Do you remember me?" To which the only answer, dear reader, was hell no. My friend, his girlfriend, returns, and I can't wait to get started so we can be finished. As soon as they remove their robes, things gets really awkward. I notice boyfriend has a small tattoo on his left hip depicting a sort of hipster aero adventure situation. That looked familiar, friends. But then, I look over at his right hip and see a tattoo of similar size with my frigging and rather uncommon name. And that's when I remember the guy. I went on 3 dates with him over the course of 2 weeks and then broke it off with him because he had some serious red flags. My friend notices my face and is like, "Oh, yeah, the tattoo. That's his one that got away from a while back. Weird that you have the same name though." I look at her and I know I can't lie, so I flat out say, I think that's is my name." Her boyfriend then starts crying and coming toward us both, bare and with a very confusing stiffy calling out, not for his current girlfriend of nearly 6 months but for me. I nope the fifth out of there, and let them talk. It gets awfully quiet, so I head back in to check on things, only to find my friend is nowhere to be found, and her boyfriend, or now ex-boyfriend, is quietly sobbing and soloing in the middle of the studio floor. I just left him there, and sent my guy friend to get him out of there for me, while I checked on the girlfriend. She broke up with him on the spot and left, because she couldn't face me. She made sure he still paid me though, and promised to never ask me to do a couples shoot again. I did eventually do a solo shoot with her, but that's a tale for another thread entirely. Wink wink. Story 18. My dad is in the industry as a photographer, sometimes stepping close to the line to straight up corn. I help him out sometimes during shoots. They are a lot of fun most of the time. Everyone is really chill and cool to talk to. He offers courses for other photographers who are trying to start out in the industry. These often take place over the span of a few days in an exotic setting, for example on islands like Majorca or Ibiza. We often had run-ins with the police from different countries because tourists called them lol. He often gets criticism. People call him out for objectifying women and such. And yeah, the industry is brutal, and some photographers are a-holes. This is why my dad has a moral codex written down on his website and online profiles, which is something that surprisingly not many photographers have. Some modeling agencies are straight up awful, going as far as only allowing the models to eat a certain amount of food per day, the only allowed snack during shoots for a former model. He had some shootings where Tic Tacs, or to restrict their personal life, preventing them from having boyfriends, controlling their social media, which is why my dad nowadays only works with freelancing models, both male and female. You often hear stories about photographers and models doing it behind the scenes. This is true to an extent. Some do it and fully embrace it, however not without consent from the models. My dad sees his work more as an art form. Most of his work is pretty artistic or provocative. People often ask me if I believe him when he says that he'd never touch a model, and yeah, I do. I have so many stories and anecdotes to tell, ranging from funny to tragic and creepy. If there's a demand, I could tell some. Story 19. Ooh, and ask Reddit. I can actually respond to. I'm a makeup artist in the corn world. I'm there on set all the time, so I see it all. Nothing has really been awkward for me. I'm pretty laid back, and it all just seems pretty natural for me, just like people doing their jobs. I guess the most awkward moment is if I can tell the two actors don't have chemistry or they're not attracted to each other. I feel like it shows on film. That's the only moment I could describe as being awkward. Oh, actually, it was really awkward for me this one time filming a group project. I went into a different room to clean my brushes, and one guy took a break from the scene to come and talk to me. He stood there bare and soloing while asking about my job. I've seen literally everything, but it was pretty awkward when the guy left a room from banging a corn star to come and talk to me about nothing multiple times. He was twice my age too. I asked him if he was probably needed on set, and he agreed. Job in general is awesome. I met some really cool people and have made some awesome friends. I don't get excited or charged during filming before you ask, except maybe this one scene where it was one girl and two really attractive guys that were also both bi and all really having fun. I was a bit jealous. Haha. It is pretty hot when I can tell the actors are super into it and enjoying themselves. Story 20. When I was 22, I was asked by a friend of mine to record him and his wife having fun. He said it didn't have to be weird, because they weren't looking for a 3 score or anything like that. I agreed because it sounded interesting, but the fun they had was extremely rough and unexpected. At one point he started crying while she was taking charge of the back door while wearing a large attachment, and I asked if he was all right, which caused him to get pissed and yell at me for interrupting them. I stayed quiet after that and kept recording when he was able to get back in the mood. After they were done, he left the room and his wife asked me to never to bring up him crying to him because he was sensitive about it. I of course agreed, and she hugged me, then kissed me on my cheek, which I really didn't like because she was still bare and covered in sweat, and I just watched her going through the back door, not more than 15 minutes prior. Story 21. When I was 18, I started shooting corn for the owner of our local toy store chain. I answered an ad on Craigslist. I was shooting a scene of him and his girlfriend, and he nicked the inside of his dong on her tooth in a blowy scene, shot blood like a water pistol with every heartbeat for about a minute or so. He was 50-something, and we shot with his 18-year-old girlfriend, who I knew from a different school and had basically run away from home. She lived with him and was kept in a strict relationship. She took care of his kids in between shooting, totally healthy, everything. Another time, we hired a random guy by putting a sign in his store with a picture of his girlfriend and the with caption, "You wanna bang this?" who showed up to the hotel, couldn't get up, completely normal, performance pressure is a thing, then drank an entire fifth of rum in 10 minutes, tried to do it soft. He got so sad but couldn't show it, so then he drove off, which the producer allowed him to do. This was a truly terrible experience for me. The way it can be so degrading to everyone involved if it's controlled by toxicity and crappy values. So now I make ethical corn. That shows how intimacy can be lovely and consensual and not incredibly abusive. Truly awesome. Support your local ethical corn makers, y'all. Story 22. I worked as a photographer on corn sets shortly back in 2011. It's like any other job. Nothing awkward happened during my year. Most sets have 5 to 12 people. It's fairly professional. I try to do my best to take the best angles of the girls. Work was steady, but I made roughly $30,000, which was considered low back in 2011. I ended up freelancing and starting my own business. A lot of the girls who are traveling cess workers supported me early on. Story 23. I started working as a corn photographer in the early 90s when corn wasn't really that available. This meant the budgets for these films were really quite high, which in turn resulted in high professionalism from all parts of the process. Unfortunately, this had the side effect of not really dishing out many awkward shots or accidental poopings. There is one time, however, that I remember like it was yesterday. We had just finished shooting a backdoor scene with an Eastern European woman. I've since forgotten her name. She was using a hairdryer. Unplugged, of course. The only problem was that it wasn't. She finished using the hairdryer and took it out and dropped it onto the floor. Apparently, she hadn't properly cleaned herself enough, because as soon as that thing came in contact with the floor, it started blowing poop all over the room. It was vile. It wasn't too much poop, but the fact that a machine was spewing hot poop all over the room was utterly disgusting. And it's something I'll unfortunately remember until the day I die. I don't wish that view upon anyone, not even my worst enemy. Story 24. Back when I was a broke-out-of-work photojournalist, I would take all sorts of photo gigs to make ends meet, including some corn content. After one of the jobs, the model client, her makeup girl, and I went to a diner to go over the photos and decide which ones I would touch up. She'd been fasting to look skinnier for the shoot, so she wasn't too picky on where we stopped. When we got there, she practically ran to the corner booth before ordering a huge burger. There were well over 1,000 shots, so going through them took a while. Surprisingly, our waiter was incredibly attentive the entire time despite us sitting there well after the food had been finished. I don't think our waters or coffees were ever less than half full, and he kept reassuring us that we could stay as long as we needed. It was almost annoying how he kept checking on us every few minutes. Once we had narrowed it down to a couple of dozen photos to be touched up, we paid the tab and got up to leave. That's when I noticed the giant mirror right behind the booth. Every time the waiter came over, he got an explicit eyeful of the woman sitting next to me on my laptop screen. Thankfully, the model wasn't exactly bashful about her body and found it hilarious. Story 25. Okay, story time. We were working a soft core for late-night cable, but the actors were generally rough folks. So the scene was supposed to be simulated, right? Well, the dummies couldn't figure this out. Meanwhile, the director had a PA sound system wired up so he could direct from the monitor area. Video Village. Well, we were up in the Hollywood Hills in the pool area of a mansion. There are definitely neighbors up there. Anyways, the director had this PA turned up loud and he'd be shouting at the actors, bang her, no don't touch his dong, don't touch it, bang her, damn it, don't give him a blowy, fake it, and on and on and on. Same show. An actress comes out of HMU dressed in only a mid-thigh nightie. She's slinking along next to the pool, tiptoeing around lights and cables when out of nowhere tunk, her little early 2000s Nokia hits the ground. Everyone freezes. Crickets. Where did that phone fall from? She doesn't have enough cleavage. No purse. She wasn't holding it. She turns bright red, snatches the phone, and bolts back into the makeup trailer. Another gig. Loser male actor can't prepare his smoothie. So the second assistant director gets a squirt bottle filled with a little Elmer's glue and KY. At the moment of phony scene, he squeezes the bottle and overdoes it so badly it looks like a frigging horse was crapping on this poor girl. The whole crew falls apart laughing and pretty much kill the whole scene. There are more stories, but they're all from years ago and I can remember them right now. Maybe I'll add more. Story 26. Generally, it's pretty fun. I direct and film amateur shoots and get paid per X amount of views. One of my first video shoots got over 100,000 views with the amateur actress I am currently dating. Not many awkward parts to speak of as such. For me, if you don't mind getting up close to two people doing it or being caught filming in public, I'd prefer filming to photography as I find that there's more prep work and editing in video shoots, which I really enjoy doing. The feeling of shooting is pretty mixed depending on the type of corn myself and the actors are doing. For example, am I going to be in the shoot? Am I filming two people doing it? Do I have to hide to film? Some can be a massive turn-on, some can be boring, and some can even be slightly scary depending. The craziest moments so far have been when my girlfriend was going to do it, another guy and a girl, and I had to watch as they bring her to the peak multiple times. Amateur shoots are always way better than pro shoots. Much less money, but you can actually enjoy the process. Story 27. I've worked in corn for about 6 years total, mostly working for gay studios. Honestly, feeling awkward has gone out the door. It's very difficult to be awkward when you work in that sort of environment. People ask me if I get in the mood while filming. No, I'm more focused on getting the right shots and angles plus directing the model, which takes the fun out of it. It has happened, but only with models who are extremely good at their job and move fluently. I've discovered working that closely and personally with people is just too much drama. I've taken a step back for the rest of this year. But I've definitely been sprayed on a couple times. Also had to witness a couple positive STD screenings. That was awkward. Story 28. Not really corn, but when I was a photographer, I would take classes and go to photography meetups to learn more. I did shoots of models and then shoots of nude models. Basically, you would take turns being the primary photographer, give the model some direction, play with the light a bit, try different camera settings and angles, ask her to pose a certain way to get your shot. Knowing Photoshop was a really big deal back then, so getting shots you could mess around with in post-production was awesome. The models were usually really nice, and I told them I'm just learning, so if there's a pose you want to try, I'm just happy to figure things out. The people who would go to these meetups are about who you'd expect. A few people who are there to learn, and a few people who are there to take pictures of a bare girl. At one shoot, one of the photographers kept trying to get the model to pose in certain ways, like he just really wanted to take pictures straight up her downtown area. This was supposed to be artistic nude modeling, not a corn shoot. He was trying to get her in weird positions. She said no, and they talked a bit, and then they went back to posing and shooting, and he kept moving around her and getting louder with his directions, and she started to get louder about saying no, I don't do that. And then she jumped up and grabbed her clothes and left the room, and then the studio, with her boyfriend, following behind her. I didn't ask for a refund and none was offered, but I stopped going to those meetups. Story 29. My first job out of university was a corn producer, which basically meant doing everything from camera operator to runner to computer technician. It was a 24-hour channel, so a lot of late nights and early mornings of soul corruption. We often worked 5 to 6 nights a week, which led to a very quick burnout. My job was funny and offered me a lot of party stories, but every day I left work feeling a little bit dirtier and my faith in humanity was pretty much gone. The girls were awesome and most of them were cool, but there was a few wild cards. Drink and drugs were pretty common. I saw some pretty gross and hilarious things, but by far the grossest was our boss. It was an all-female crew, but our boss was male and he kept cameras and mics on in every single room 24/7, so he was always watching not only the performers but also us. He was very handsy and loved the attention he got from the presenters when he gave them things like time off or an extra break. It also made it hard to interact with my partner intimately. Every now and then I catch myself thinking, that sounds like something one of the girls would say. It must come off so fake. It made me super self-conscious, like I was mimicking those over-the-top moans you hear in corn. Still, I can't help but laugh when I remember some of the things that happened. At least there were some good memories in the mix. Story 30. Wow. A ton of comments here from actual performers. I only worked at a studio once, just for a day, running camera. The timing was wild. I had just finished helping my friend close up his store for good, so we were doing a full shutdown, packing, clearing, the works. It was a rough morning, and I'd only managed about 30 minutes of sleep before I got a call from a Craigslist posting I'd replied to the week before. It was the studio. On the drive there, I could feel my hands shaking. Honestly, I think sleeping for only 30 minutes might be worse than not sleeping at all. When I arrived, it turned out to be a private 2-story house, exactly the kind of setup you'd expect. The owner gave off major a-hole energy, and the few people working for him looked like they were always one wrong word away from getting chewed out. It reminded me of how some popular YouTubers film everything out of their homes, just with a completely different kind of content. The place was carpeted, so everyone had to take their shoes off. After about 30 minutes in just my socks, I started to feel lube seeping through to my feet. That's when it hit me. This is why corn starlets wear heels. Well, one of the reasons. At one point, we were swapping out a prop for a scene, a cold steel exam table with fold-out stirrups. The house was warm and I was running on 30 minutes of sleep, barely staying awake. The owner and I were struggling to move the thing, even though he was pretty built. Out of nowhere he barked, "Come on, dig," trying to hype me up like it was boot camp. He mentioned he used to be in the army, and yeah, I could tell. Then he shouted, "Dig, come on, tell me your Indian name." I just froze internally. Indian name? What the hell was this guy even talking about? We were both on our knees, manhandling a nasty exam table, and suddenly he's spouting off weird pseudo-military nonsense like we're in a fever dream. "Tell me your Indian name," he barked. Now, I never miss a chance to crack a joke, especially if it's self-deprecating. "Peaks too quick," I shouted back. He just stared at me, dead-eyed. Not even a twitch. Of course. No sense of humor whatsoever. Then, from my right, I hear a soft giggle. I turn my head, and there they are. A bare couple, young, blonde, hot, and very much just sitting there on the carpet. I had been so sleep-deprived, I completely forgot they were in the room next to me, quietly waiting for their scene. I didn't get the full-time gig, he just paid me for the day, but I was glad. I didn't want to work for a humorless a-hole anyway. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.